Our speaker tonight, man, I'd first heard this guy in 2019 on a panel at Usual Suspects, and I couldn't tell you what he said, but I'll never forget the way he made me feel. And I got to spend some more time with him at a retreat last year and get to know him a little better. He's really one of my favorite guys to listen to. Give it up for Mr. Ben Robinson.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Ben, I'm alcoholic. Who's going? What? Okay. Okay, what a weekend. What a weekend. I talked to my wife on the break, and because of this weekend, I was able to get honest with her about some stuff. And it wasn't nothing deceiving or anything like that, but it was some feelings that I had about a bankruptcy that we're about to have to do. And I was able to do it because I've been scared to do this talk with her. And we was both able to have the hard talk and love each other and not beat each other up over it. And, you know, I mean, it just, we're newlyweds too. You know, I mean, going bankrupt and newly married. You know, what a gift she got, right? I don't think it's funny. There's a lot of things that's hit me over the weekend. And from that newcomers panel, man, there was some stuff in that I it really got me, you know. I was thinking about my Ebby. There was this girl named Beth at my rehab, and she told me about recovery meetings. And she got me to go to my first meeting. Dale Smith, he was the one that was in my first meeting, and he welcomed me. He made me feel like I belonged. You know, he would talk to my language. Bernie. There's a guy, old timer named Bernie. He knew my mom and my dad, and you know, and he welcomed me. I was new and I didn't have a job. I got a job and it was 40 minutes away. And Pilot Bill got up every morning, came and got me, and took me, and it was an hour for him to go and then come back, and he did that at 5 o'clock in the morning. And he did that for 2 weeks until I could get a ride. And I am the guy that will take advantage of people, but this was the first time that I wasn't trying to take advantage of somebody. And he was my Ebby. He showed me Tony, my first sponsor. Nobody would sponsor me. I was a maniac. I was that guy that, you know, in the first came in the meetings and shared too long, too many times, and everybody's like, "Shut him down!" And then, by God, some of y'all are like that too. And I wasn't the prize sponsee. I wasn't the guy that everybody's like, "Oh, B gets me." I was just a little maniac, man. I was just crazy I didn't know how to live. I didn't know the rules of AA. I didn't know that you couldn't do certain things, talk about certain things. You know what? They loved me anyway. They, even though that I was on their nerves, that I got on everything, they loved me. And Tony, nobody would sponsor me, and finally I was like, this dude looks like he's loving. He's funny. And I went and I said, Tony, man, nobody sponsored me. Will you sponsor me? He says, I've been waiting on you. Saved my life. I don't just have one Ebby. I have a whole bunch of people that just have helped me. And then, I went to another place, and then I got Herb as a sponsor. And Herb was the most loving spiritual guy I've ever met, and he just loved me. I'd come to him with some craziness, and he loved me. You know what, man? I never got beat up out of AA. So how can I not love this fellowship? How can I not, man, and then this one led to this one, that led to this one, that led to this one. And then, I don't know about y'all, I got butt-ass crazy about 8 years. And Bill C., I was listening to Bill C., and I was crying in my car, and I was listening to him, and he says, he puts his phone number on the, that's what he said. Yeah, he put his phone number on the tape, when he was speaking, he says, I always answer my phone, and I always say yes. And I was like, we're about to find out. And I called him. And I remember I called him and I said, "Hey, Bill, and he says, and he said, I said, I heard you had 10 years. You went through a craziness and whatever, And then he says, yes, sir. He says, I did, and I just went into a fist step. It wasn't. It was the glory hole kind. I didn't do it. I know somebody that did, and I was trying to tell And then you think that's funny. So I'm telling him all this, and then next thing you know, he says, Ben, man, thank you, and it's an honor for you to tell me this. And he says, but I just want you to know that I'm in my car on my Bluetooth, and my wife's in the car. I was just like, of course she is. At that time, when you get to that place, when you are that ready, when you are that beat down, when you're so scared, you're so lonely, you're so in sobriety, you don't care who hears. You just won't help. You're just so lonely and scared. Help me not do it, man. Help me with what I'm going through, and I couldn't tell my sponsor at that time because my sponsor at that time was like my dad, and he was 80-some years old, and I just was like, he don't even know what a glory hole is. They don't. This ain't taped, is it? Okay, I'm just kidding about the glory hole. That was a joke. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so okay, so what he said is, he says, you need to do a 4-step. He says, you need to get and do some inventory. He says, you're going to have to go, And he says, how close are you to Nashville? And I said, well, I'm about 4 hours away. And he says, I'm going to give you a guy's number. And he says, and I want you to call him. And he gave me Steve Lee's number. And I called him. And I did a fist step. I said, your wife in the car? And then, but what happened was I got with him, and the next thing you know, he told me, he says, Ben, you're going to have to rededicate yourself to a 3rd step, and you need to do a 4th step, and he said, and you're going to have to get some of these secrets out. And he told me, he says, Ben, he says, they say you're sick is your secrets. He says, I got another look on it. He says, you're as sick as you are a secret. It ain't your secrets that's killing you. It's you being secret about them. And then next thing you know, and he says he was just going to listen to my 5th step. And I said, you're my sponsor. He said he didn't know how that happened, but 10 years later, he's still, he's been there, and he's guided me. So we're going to start back. I don't know why I went that way, but I did. Okay, so a lot of things. I just want y'all to know, man. I am intimidated on speaking about getting up and speaking, and the reason I am is, one, I have a speech impairment, and in my speech impairment, I get real excited and I stutter and I go into stories, and then I'll be in a story and I'll have another thought and I'll go this way and won't finish and. Like I just did, and what it is God has done so much for me in this program. I don't think that I do a good enough way of communicating what He really done, what the fellowship of AA has done for me, man. What is it? I mean, when I say I was a maniac, I was a maniac, man. And for me to be okay being me right here, right now, man, the miracles. And how can I not tell the good news? So that's why I like being asked to speak, but I don't like to speak. I like the attention, but I don't like doing it because I don't think I do good. And so I don't like doing it. Okay. But, so I was a little kid that got in a lot of trouble. I had a speech impairment. I was always in trouble, speech impairment. I was very poor. There was a lot of abuse in my house. There was a lot of physical abuse. There was abandonment. There was a lot of issues in my house, and all I did was get in more trouble. I wanted more attention. And that's what I did. I was just very active. I had a lot of energy. I had, and they said I had potential, I'm not dumb, but my intelligence, I'm not as good at doing certain things, and so I was in special ed. So then I was on the short bus, so there was a lot of stuff, right? And then, and I came from a family that had there was a lot of stuff that came. On my mom's side, my grandmother, she ended up, she was on Xanaxes or some kind of nerve pills and stuff, and ended up decided that she was going to kill herself, and my mom found her. So there's already traumatic stuff on that side. And then on my dad's side, it's all alcoholics and drug addicts. He was a bootlegger, and everybody in there drinks or sells drugs. I mean, there's just a lot. And my grandfather ended up going on a binge, and he got drunk and ended up shooting my grandmother and killing her. And so there's trauma on both sides. And then I have a mom that's traumatic, and I have a dad that's traumatic, and they come together, and then they have me. They don't know how to raise me. They don't, my dad ended up abandoning me. He left. I got to see, and good thing is he was very violent. So he beat my brothers. He beat my mom. I got to see some of it before he left. And I was very young, but I still have a memory of it. And I always was like, I hate my dad. And I ended up being my dad. Hated him, man. So, whenever I finally started drinking a drug, and I just went fast. When your papa's a bootlegger, you can go to any bootlegger and just say, "Hey, Clyde's my bootlegger, my grandfather," and you can go up there at 12 years old and start getting, how's Clyde? He's good. He's down there in Clay Hill, and then I'd get it, and it made me popular. Now I want y'all to know that was my first line of credit as a bootlegger, it was my first line of bad credit, too. I didn't think about that until now. But anyway, with alcohol and drug, everybody in my family was into all that, so it was real easy for me to get, and it was easy, and I never would run out because everybody sold it, or my dad owned a bar. You know what I'm saying? So I got real bad, real fast, and I started going to jail. Anybody go to jail in here? Yeah, I'm a recovering criminal too. I've been arrested for anything and everything you can almost think of. I've been arrested for underage drinking, PI, DUI. If it's got an I, I've been arrested for it. I went from that to vandalism. Went to evading arrest. Assault on an officer. Went from breaking in cars, breaking in houses, breaking in businesses. Stole a transfer truck on Christmas night. And I did one at Ebby. I ran it into a house. When you're on Jack Daniels and Xanaxes, man, they're hard to learn how to drive. Yeah. And then they ended up getting me for theft over $50,000, and it got me. Been arrested for false imprisonment. Anybody know what false imprisonment is? And if you lock your girlfriend in the closet, they will arrest you for that. I didn't do it. I just saying. I was giving you an example. I got busted. I got arrested for manufacturing meth. I've been arrested for about anything and everything. I want y'all to know who you're. I really think I'm smart now. Okay, so I got busted on a manufacturing meth charge, right? And I ended up taking it all the way to grand jury. And I had the most brilliant lawyer in the world. I represented myself in a manufacturing meth charge in Tennessee. I was going to meetings at the time, and they were like, "Ben, don't do it. Get a lawyer." I was like, "I'm good." I thought I was Perry Mason. But anyway, I tell you all that, I got arrested a lot, but I'm glad that I didn't get arrested for everything that I could have. I think about it, and we talk about being fair, right? Being fair. Man, I'm so grateful life ain't fair. Because if it was fair, my mom. I used to say that I stole from my mom. Man, I grab her debit card, and I would go and I'd take all her money out of, and she was on disability, and I'd take all her money out and go spend it on partying. That ain't theft, that's fraud. You go to prison for that. She didn't put me in prison. I used to get on my hands and knees and go and put my hand under her pillow to get her purse or her pills. Why were they there? And that right there is not theft. That's called a cat burglary. But they didn't go to jail for it. My mom had my son in her arms, and she wouldn't give me what I needed, and she had my son in her arms and her pocketbook, and I went over and I snatched her pocketbook off of her with my son in her arms. That ain't stealing, that's armed robbery. And that's from the person that loved me the most. And I don't want to judge anybody for anything. That's comical. Ever. So, anyway, whenever I came into AA, man, I came in, I was a maniac. I was a maniac. And I came in the rooms, and I remember, I loved AA. It was the first place that I came in, and they kept on saying, "Keep coming back." I didn't know that was, when they say "keep coming back," I didn't know his hidden messages in that. You just said some sick shit, I didn't know that, you keep coming back, I was like, yeah. I was like, did my mama tell you I was coming? They were, they didn't kick me out. I'd say all this stuff, and they still love me. And people would try to help me. They would do all these things, and so I started doing a lot of recovery. I started getting in. I'd go to meetings. I did a lot of meetings. And then after a period of time, I was in and out for about 3 years. And then finally, I got a well-whooped ass, and I came and I started doing a lot of stuff in recovery. And whenever I started doing it, I started getting a lot of the good stuff. And I'd go in a lot of meetings. I was getting in the car. We was doing asphalt recovery. Y'all know what asphalt recovery? If you don't get none, it's your own asphalt. Yeah. And then we would get, we get in the car, we'd go everywhere, and next thing you know, I'm a GSR, and I'm taking meetings into treatment. I go through the steps with my sponsor. I go through. I do all this stuff. I'm in, man. I'm loving it. And I can share for about 10 minutes, make people laugh, and so that right there, people like that, and then next thing you know, I'm all in, but the newness wore away, and what happened is I was very much in activity, but I wasn't in that action. I was doing the best that I could, and I'm going to tell you, you can get away with staying in here and doing so many things, doing a lot of AA things, And you can do it, and it will keep you busy and occupied, but there's going to be a time, and I don't know when or what it is. For me, it was about 8 years, and I got into a lot of 6X. I got into doing things, and then, I got into just doing, I was looking for substitutions outside of this because it wasn't doing anything for me. Going to doing another treatment center, I would do it, and it didn't give me that high no more. I'd go to the jails, it didn't give me that high. I did all this stuff, and it didn't give me that high. And then next thing you know, I'm lost. You want to talk about hopeless? See, there's hopeless, but whenever you're hopeless and you don't have a car, job, woman, nothing, you're on the streets of Chattanooga, living at a mission, eating out of the community kitchen. When you're that, you got a car is hope. A job is hope. A career is hope. And then next thing you know, you get these things, and you're doing the things in AA that you think that is doing it, and you're still not there's not anything wrong, but there's something just ain't right inside. And so then next thing you know, I'm substituting. I'm gambling. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm doing this. I'm in here sharing like Shakespeare, living like a reindeer. I want y'all to think that I'm doing good. I want y'all to think. And next thing you know, I'm just lost. I'm thinking about suicide because I think there's no hope for somebody like me. And then I go to Steve. And whenever I go to Steve, I go back through the steps, and I don't know about you, but what happened was I kept a secret. I know y'all don't keep secrets when y'all do y'all's 5 steps, but I did. And I'm going to tell you, you can get away with it. You can get relief by doing it without doing that one secret. And I did. But there's going to be, I don't know what time it is, but there's a time in my story, and it was about 8 years, that what happened was I had to tell the secret. I had to face it. Or I was going to kill myself or get high. It was coming. And then what happened was I went and I told my secret. And I'm going to tell y'all my secret, because and my secret is my daughter died. And when my daughter was born, I ended up coming to the hospital in ICU in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I was in there, and I was detoxing in the waiting room. And whenever I was in there detoxing, I did it. And I didn't leave, and I didn't go get anything, because I thought that's what a good daddy did. I'm not a good daddy, but that's what I thought a good daddy did. And then, next thing you know, they come and they tell me that my daughter died. And I did not care. I had no feelings. My soul was so dark and was so black inside, I couldn't even feel for the person I'm supposed to love the most in this world. My little daughter, Alize Sky Robinson. I couldn't even say her name for years in recovery because I wouldn't face it. And then the first thing I did is I used it as an excuse to go down to the emergency room and use it to tell them I'm having a nervous breakdown and give me some Valiums. And that's what I done. And then I left there and I went to the dope man's house, and I went there, and I remember he goes, Ben, I just heard about your daughter, man. He says, that's super sad, man. If there's anything that I can ever do, man, just let me know. I said, all right, bro, hook me up. I'll use my daughter's death to get more. And then I went and got drunk on Xanaxes, and I went to the funeral and tried to fight everybody. I couldn't even, my daughter, my mom couldn't even grieve her own granddaughter. Angela couldn't grieve her daughter. The whole family couldn't grieve because there was Ben's trying, the police are out there, they're going to arrest him, and they told me that I couldn't go, and I didn't care. They said that you can't go to the cemetery, and I didn't care. But what did happen was I knew that there was something in my soul sickness inside of me, that there was something wrong with me, and I knew it. And I went for oblivion, and I went on a run of all runs, and I was trying to do suicide by you. I was trying to rob people. I was trying to do anything and everything to try to die. I wanted you to kill me because I just didn't. And I want y'all to know, I haven't told you my secret. That ain't my secret. My secret is my daughter was dying, and they couldn't figure out what the virus was. So they came and they said, Ben, they said, Angela, we can't figure out what this is. Is there any way that there could be possible that either one, that you have a STD? And I said, Angela said, no, I don't got one. And I said, no, I don't got one. And I did. And I do. And when my daughter's life was on the line, I said no. When my daughter's life on the line, I was so scared that people would blame me for her death. I said no. I was afraid that I'd never get to have sex again. So I said no. I thought everybody would say, ooh, there goes Ben. So I said no. I was more worried about being blamed. More worried about my image. More worried about my sex life than I was my daughter's life. And I kept on having sex with women, and I wouldn't tell them I had STDs. And I did that in recovery. I did it in the rooms of AA. Of course, I was wanting to kill myself. I was still hurting people. I was doing just enough to feel just enough relief that I wasn't doing the stuff, but I wasn't getting freed from the stuff. But I was still doing this, but I wasn't doing all that. And see, I thought progress was enough. Well, as long as I'm not doing this. And I'm going to tell you, that right there is enough until it ain't enough. And I'm telling you, whenever it wasn't, what happens is I'm at a turning point. I go and really get honest. I really do this deal. I tell every nick and cranny. I even remember whenever that hour where I had to drive and I was doing that hour, I called him. I said, hey, listen, Steve, I don't got no damn insurance on my car. I'm not, okay, get some. I swear, because I was like, man, and then next thing you know, what happened to me was this. It's like, I'm not letting this, I'm not going to be hostage from it no more. I'm going to be me. But at the time, this is the thing. I was engaged to be married. And I hadn't told her. And I remember telling Steve, I said, man, this is the love of my life. If I tell her, she's going to leave me. I don't know if I can do this. And he said, I remember he said, he goes, Ben, you can't live like that no more. He says, you got to tell her. I said, can I tell her after I marry her? He says, no. I said, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know. Everybody leaves me. Everybody leaves me. And she knows this. She's going to leave me. I don't think I can do this. And I remember we went back to, I went back and I didn't tell her, and then next thing you know, we go to this movie, and it's a Will Smith movie, and his kid dies in it, and we're in the movies, and I'm over here ugly crying, and everybody's like, shut up. I'm like, I'm not a kid, I don't know. And then she's over here like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know. And then next thing you know, we leave. And when we leave, I'm driving, we're going down the road, and we're talking, and then it hit me. And I was like, all right, I'm going to tell her. I said, baby, I got to tell you something. And she, and I said, you ain't going to like it. And I said, I got STD. And I said, I had it before we got together. And I told her, I said, I was dishonest, I was deceitful. I said our whole relationship, and I just kept on. And I was probably not textbook amends, but I was getting honest, and I was being real with her. And I was just going on, and the next thing you know, she goes, Ben, stop it. And I looked at her, and she goes, listen. She says, I got it too. And she says, and I had it before I got with you. You know the first thing that came in my mind? You deceitful bitch. Next thing you know, the next one was, what else ain't you telling me? But I want y'all to know what happened was she had never told her sponsor. She had been in recovery. She had been in recovery for years, and she had never told nobody. She was hiding it from me. She was hiding her medicine. She was hiding it from me, and she was able to finally tell her sponsor, and she was able to get free. She then came to me and she says, Ben, she says, I'm doing this woman's retreat, and one of the things that they do is this thing called walk across. And what they do is everybody gets up and goes over to this side of the room, and then what they do is they ask a question. Everybody that's been sexually abused, walk across. And she says, the question that I want to use this as the question. And she went straight to wanting to help somebody else with her secret. I'm so scared. I'm going to lose so much. And I think that there's no way I'm ever going to be there. I'm going to lose her. I can't do this. I can't trust the process. I'm afraid what's going to happen. And I don't know what is on the other side of trusting God. Trusting my sponsor. Trusting you. Knowing that take responsibility of your actions. Take responsibility. Make the amends. And let the other just be in God's hands, and you don't know what's going to happen. And what happened was I was able to set her. It was a ripple effect that we both was able to be free of it. So I was raised in a little town. And it was and it's a little country town in Tennessee. And the way that I was raised was very poor. If you got disability, it was cha-ching. You had money for life. That's the way that's what we was raised very sexist. I was raised very sexist. I was raised very racist. I was raised homophobic. I was raised all this. And I have a daughter, and my daughter was my first daughter, and I ended up abandoning her, and she was not in my life. I wasn't in her life. I was a deadbeat dad, and I abandoned her. And whenever I abandoned her, she was with a good Christian family. She was, and it was good that I wasn't in her life. I was only brought bad stuff in her life, but I abandoned her. Okay, so whenever I was getting sober, I was going to make amends. Well, I couldn't make amends because she was in high school, and I couldn't just come into her life and make a big mess, because it had been a court battle and all this stuff. So what I done is I waited till she was 18. Whenever she was 18, I stalked her on Facebook. And I saw she was like 2.5 hours away from me, and and I was looking, and she was going to college at ETSU. She was coming to me. She could have went to Chattanooga, Nashville, Atlanta. She could have went to Knoxville. She could have went all these places, but she came to me. So I messaged her, and I said, hey, I was introduced myself on Facebook, and then I said, hey, I'd like to take you out to lunch. Well, ended up she went to lunch. We went to lunch, and I met her. I'd like to tell you that the relationship was great. It wasn't. But what y'all taught me was every holiday, I said Happy New Year's, Happy Christmas, Happy Easter, every birthday. I said, happy birthday. I didn't go into nothing crazy. I just let her know that I'm thinking about her. Nothing. I didn't want nothing from her. I don't want to push her into anything. I didn't want to do nothing. At 8 years, she was 18. At 27, I was going through a divorce, and it was a bad divorce. And I was going through a bad divorce, and whenever I was going through this bad divorce, some reason I messaged her, and I was like, she moved to Nashville, and I was like, and I just said, hey, I'm in Nashville quite a bit, and I said, the next time I come, I'd like to take you out to eat. And I said, and I'd like to take you out to eat, and I'd like to, if you don't want to, I understand. I said, I thank you for letting me be a part of your life on Facebook. And next thing you know, she didn't respond, and then next thing you know, she says, yes, I would love that. And then we started chatting. Well, in the midst of this, I started, there was this girl that was gay that came in and asked me to sponsor her. And I've never sponsored a woman. And so what I done is I went to my sponsor, and she was gay, and I'm not attracted to her. So we said, yeah. I've never done it, never even thought about it. And in that, I started sponsoring her. And I had an opinion on gay. And then I took her through the steps. And whenever I took her through the steps, I had an experience. And it changed my opinion. I didn't know. I'm not racist. I'm not sexist, and I'm not racist. It was somebody else's belief that I was taught, and I took it on my own. And I'm not that. And then, but what happened is by doing that, I got to learn how she thought, how she felt, how she did all this, right? I mean, and I'm you know, and I don't, you know, I'm thinking, you know, this is a new experience. This is, you know, it's going great. It's good. You know, and then next thing you know, I'm chatting with my daughter, and we start chatting a lot, and find out that Thanksgiving, she came out as gay. And her family disowned her. And I came in her life right when she needed. And I could be there, and I could say, hey, I'm here. I understand. I could use the program in this program, and I was able to do it. And I thought that I was sponsoring Mindy, and I was going to help Mindy, and I didn't know Mindy was sent there for me. I didn't know Mindy was being sent to help me, to be able to relate with my daughter, the one that I abandoned. And I'm going to tell you, and even more after that. There was this guy, this trans guy. He was in our rooms, and nobody would sponsor him. I went and I said, we was out to dinner and stuff, and I said, hey, who's sponsoring this? And they said, nah, he's asked a few people, nobody will sponsor him. And I texted him, and I said, hey, who's your sponsor? And he said, I'm in between them. And I said, hey, I'd like to put my name in the hat. And he says, you sure? I said, how can I not? I said, absolutely, man. My daughter is engaged to a trans man. I didn't know they were going to help me with the plurals. I didn't know they were going to help me. You know, I didn't know they were going to help me with this, to help me with that. You know, hey, I have these belief systems. I got all these belief systems back here, and I think that, you know, I don't want to look at them. I don't want to face them. I don't want to do this. I think I'm right. I don't know that they're blocking me. They're blocking me from loving people. They're blocking me from them being apart. I'm not, you know, I don't want to be separated, but I'm going to separate. Well, I want to be inclusive, but I don't want to be. No, I'm sponsoring you. How can a maniac? They sponsored me. How can I say no? If somebody wants their life, there's hopeless, they're scared, they're afraid. How can I say, hey, sorry, I don't believe in that? I know I can't. And I'm glad that I didn't, because I didn't know that they were saving me. And I'm in my daughter's life today because of it. And and she just moved to Vancouver, Washington. She just moved over there and she wants me to come visit. I made amends with her and she says, I don't think you ever done anything to me. I said, well, I'm going to try my best to not ever. Man, I'm going to tell you this. I am a product of doing some stupid shit in AA and being able to stay sober. I mean, in the game, I'm glad that you can have a slump and stay in here. I'm glad they can put you on the bench and still stay in here. I'm glad that I can act like the umpire and still stay in here. I'm glad. Why? Because I'm going to tell you, now I was going through my divorce, and whenever I was going through my divorce, I was 15 years sober when I was going through my divorce, and we was going through, and I cheated on my wife. The woman that I loved the most in this world. I cheated on my wife, and she wanted to divorce me, and she should have. And when we was going through divorce, I was like, she's a real strong member of recovery, and I think I am, And I was like, we're going to show people how to have a divorce with integrity. It ain't funny. I really thought that. I'm telling you, I'm glad. Hey, and next thing you know, we're doing good. We're doing okay. I'm moved into the office apartment. Down at the office, and then she's at the house, and she gets one dog. I get the other one. The ones that we love. She really loves that one. I love that one. And we're like we're in agreement, right? Well. Next thing you know, I take my dog to the dog sitter, like to play with the other dogs and stuff while I'm working and stuff. Well, ended up, she had a change of mind. I didn't know she could do that, and she decided she wanted both dogs, so she went and kidnapped my dog from the pet sitter, like the border, right? Well. I'm like, I'm giving you every damn thing. You ain't taking my dog. Because I'm going through a dark spot, and the dog was saving my life. I don't know about y'all, but when you're going through a place like that, your dog comforts you. It's my dog. I'm not giving you my dog. So I, without sponsor approval, well, not even knowledge. I didn't even think about calling my sponsor. What I done is I knew that she had to go to a meeting at a certain time, and whenever she went to this meeting, she would have to take the dog out and whatever. So I waited outside, and she went around the house, and then she was coming back, so I ran, snagged my damn dog. She beat me in the head with the leash, and I just took the dog, and I was like, and then she called the law. I was already gone, and the cops called me, and they said, would you come make a statement? And I already told my lawyer. I did call my lawyer. I didn't call my sponsor, but I called my lawyer. And then he goes, Ben, my lawyer said, don't do a statement. And so I said, no, I don't want to do a statement. And my lawyer said he would get with her lawyer and get this took care of and whatnot, because in our agreement. And so that was on Sunday. On Monday, they were going to take care of it. The next weekend, we was having AA picnic. And I was the coordinator of this picnic at a state park. And whenever I got this out of town speaker, and she had been in prison, and she had been in prison, and whatnot, and she was up there, and there's like 150 people, and she's there, or they're there, and she's up there speaking. I'm sitting right there, and she just went ghost, and she goes, "I'm freaking out." And then I look back, and there was 8 cops surrounded in SWAT, in tactical gear. And I look back there, and I was like, "Hot damn, somebody's about to have a bad day." And then one of the guys went and talked to the cop, and they're surrounded, and they wave at me, and I'm thinking I'm the coordinator of the event, so they were waving me, and I go back there, and they said, "Are you Dwayne Robinson?" I said, "Son of a bitch, I'm the one having a bad day." And I said, "Yes, sir." They said, "Do you want to do this right here or go down the hill?" I said, "Let's go down the hill." And then on the way there, I said, "Are y'all all here for me?" And they said, "Yes, sir. We have a belief that you might have a pistol." And I don't got nothing against pistols or anything. I just don't have them. I do now, but at that time I didn't have none, And I said, got down there, and I was like. At that time, it was so vindictive, because she could have had me arrested in my house. She could have had me arrested somewhere else. She gave the flyer to the cops. I was like, touche. I was like, I ain't gonna be able to beat this. But I want you to know what happened was this. She's in recovery. I hurt her so bad. She was willing to do that. I'm not a victim of her. I hurt people. I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate. Went through that. God dang it. How much time? You got 10 more minutes. Okay. So I went through that, and whenever I went through it, life got dark. And when I say it got dark, it got dark. I was embarrassed. I was in my fellowship was looking at me a certain way. I hurt her. I wasn't doing good in no area of my life, and I was considering suicide at the deepest level I've ever thought about doing it. I mean, I was there. I had it planned, and I remember I was sitting in that office apartment on the couch in my undies, eating ice cream, crying, and I had the plan, and I was going to do it. And whenever I was going to do it, I was doing it. I was, and next thing you know, I looked down in my phone, and it looked at it, and it said Steve Lee. And I don't know if y'all do. I don't know if y'all sponsor calls y'all, but mine don't call me. He calls back, right? And I looked, and I was like, hell no, I ain't answering that. Nah, hell no, And then next thing you know, I was like, why is he calling me? And then I was like, all right, I'll answer it. And then I answered, and I said, what's up, Steve? He says, He says, not much. He says, I was in my morning meditation this morning, and he said, you came in my mind, and he says, and I just thought I'd call and check on you. I was like, I didn't tell him. He says, how are you doing? I says, I'm not doing good, man. I'm scared. I'm lonely. I don't know what to do. I didn't tell him I was thinking about suicide because I thought he might call the law. You know, but I, you know, and I told him all this stuff, you know, and he goes, Ben, he goes, Ben, I understand. He says, in my sobriety, he says, in my 32 years, I've went through about 6 bottoms. And he says, and whenever I went through them, when I went through them, he says, if you would have asked me if I wanted to go through it, I'd have told you no. Did I deserve to go through it? I'd have told you no. Is it going to be helpful for me to go through it? I'd have told you no. He says, if you would have told me what was going to happen if I go through it, I would have said, I don't want to do it. He says, but by going through it, he says, it changed the trajectory of my life. He says, when we went through the bankruptcy, he says it brought me and Connie together and he says, in our relationship changed. He says, I would not change it. He says, it changed, and he says, I promise you, Ben, I promise you. I don't feel like it, but when you go through this, he says you're going to get through it, and it's going to change the trajectory of your life, and you are going to be able to help people with this. You're going to be able to help people. You're going to get through this, and it's going to change you. And he says, and I was like, I went from I'm going to kill myself to, oh shit, I'm going to be useful. I was like, I'm going to have to get off here, Steve. I got shit to do. Yeah. People, I'm saving lives now, you know. But what happened was, because of a man doing the deal, listening to that intuitive thought, thinking there was a name came in his head and said, call him, and he called him. And my life could have been on the line. I can't say that I would have killed myself, but by God, I know because he did that, I didn't. And I'm so grateful that he did that. He was doing the deal. He was doing prayer and meditation, and he had that thought come to him, and he acted on it. How many times do I go through my life and I don't act on the thought? And I say, I want to be a maximum useless to God and others, but he tells me a name to go with it. I'm like, no, not that. I mean, I got golf. Yeah. He talks too damn long, My life was on the line. And tell me there's no God. How can I think that there's no God? How can I doubt that there's a God? I'm a hopeless drunk that didn't have a chance in this world. I want you to know, I ended up, because of getting divorced, I started working and doing some step work and doing some stuff on relationships and started seeing some issues. And I want you to know, Scott, my daughter, I went to Scott at Music City Roundup, and we sat down, and he showed me how to make amends to my daughter. Because of that, I can sing my daughter's name. Because a man, and he was so eager to help somebody like me. if I don't use what I went through, it goes to waste. If I don't talk about, if I don't tell the stuff that I've done, if I don't talk about me, what I've done with my mom, if I don't talk about my daughter, if I don't talk about all these things, if I don't talk about them, nobody knows. Nobody's going to come and talk to me about it, and I can tell them that you can get through it. I can tell you can do this wrong and get through it. You can go through some dark places and make it in here. If you haven't went through a dark spot, it's just not your turn. If you stay in this program, it ain't if you're going to go through it, it's when. Because we all get our turn. I think I've got my turn too many times, but but what happened is, but if I don't tell this story, if I don't talk about it, if I don't keep on doing the deal, I can't transmit something I don't got. And I don't know about you, but I don't want my daughter's life to go to waste. I can't. She didn't get to have a life. I've got to make her life worth something. And that's what we do in here. We transform. I went from somebody that don't love, couldn't even love my own daughter, the one that you're supposed to love the most, to where I can love the craziest drunk in the room. How does that make sense? It's got to be God. Thank you for my life.